Hello, everybody. It's me, Stephen Billings, here, and we are doing another video here in the series of videos for the 52 movies and 52 movies and why they are must sees. It's a book. Andrew's got the book with him. There it is, and we are featuring each movie from the book and giving them their own videos so we can break them down a little bit, tell you why we think they're essential. Thank you, Andrew. You can stop spotlighting the book. It's about us. It's not about the. No, I'm just kidding. But yes, this video we are doing our spotlight on the 1934 film. It Happened One Night, which is a comedy romance, and it stars Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert. And with me tonight to talk about this is Mr. Andrew over here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew. I am your classic film connoisseur.
Yes, and we've talked a lot of movies on the Top 5 Weekly, which this is on the top. This is on the Best Damn Movie Show channel. So check out some of the other stuff. And but let's go ahead and jump into this. Directed by Frank Capra, written by Robert Roskin, and it's based on a short story by Samuel Hopkins Adams, and it's called Night Bus is the name of the short story. And basically this movie is about this rich girl who is trying to get to her rich soon-to-be husband, and kind of runs away from her father, and then meets up on a bus trip up to New York with Clark Gable's character, who is this news reporter and is kind of a loser. He's kind of like he's kind of drunk, kind of a drunk sometimes. And they meet up on the bus and shenanigans ensue. And I don't want to give away too much of the movie yet. I'm going to let Andrew talk about this movie. Why do you think this movie is a definite essential film to watch, and why it's in this book?
Yes. This is just an all-time classic romantic comedy. It is quite possibly the romantic comedy to start romantic comedies. Every single trope you see in this film, every single kind of thing that you would think would be cliched by this point kind of originated in this film. So without this film, you wouldn't have romantic comedies like we have romantic comedies today. So it's a foundational film for that entire genre. And it also stars two of the big stars of the time, Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert. And Clark Gable at the time did a lot of his leading man work at MGM, and he was kind of on loan to Columbia Pictures, where this film was made. Claudette Colbert was a big star. She demanded top dollar at the time, and for this film, she demanded double her top dollar salary just for the inconvenience of having to shoot this film in entirely 4 weeks, which was kind of crazy when you think about it. I mean, it's you hear about certain production times today and you think they're crazy, but back then, film productions are not as quick as they are now. Big cameras, set pieces, all that stuff. But this film is just fantastic in its theme work. The acting is great. The characters have extremely great chemistry on screen together, which is important for a romance. If you're not buying the romance, you're not going to buy the movie, essentially. And I've always loved this movie. I've loved it since the first time I saw it. And it is also important because it is the first film to win the top 5 major award categories at the Academy Awards, which was really new at the time. The award ceremony had only been around for a few years, and it won Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Screenplay, and Best Director. And like Steven said, this was based off of a short story called Night Bus, which I think was an article in Cosmopolitan magazine at the time. And Frank Capra saw this and was like, you know what, that would make a good movie. Apparently they changed a bunch of it. I think initially the Clark Gable character was supposed to be an artist from like Greenwich Village, and they changed it to like kind of this rogue type guy who was a down on his luck journalist, if you will, a newspaper man. And Claudette Colbert is an heiress. And what is interesting is you have, once again, like a lot of those films at the time, this kind of clash of cultures between the rich and the working class, or the rich and the poor class. And it's really very interesting how they're able to mesh those together in a road movie, a road comedy. Stephen, what were some of your favorite moments in the film? Because I know this is one you had to watch for the first time.
Yeah, I watched this for the first time, about a few weeks ago, and then I rewatched it again for right before we did this video. And I mean, along with what you were saying about some of the essential things, like this movie kind of started coining the term the screwball comedy, is what which is a lot more physical, and it's kind of it goes into kind of some sexual stuff without the sex, and I think that's really cool. There is literally no kiss between the leads in this movie, and that's a very interesting thing too in a romance film too. But which plays into one of my favorite scenes, which is her confession of her love to him near the end of the movie, where they've went through all this stuff. They obviously have something going on, and she confesses that she loves him, and comes and kind of just runs over to his bed, and then he kind of denies her. He denies her, and and it's like, in most cases, guys would have just been like, "Come here,"
Yeah.
and
There's a lot of reluctance,
and slept with her.
Yeah, there's a reluctance with the Clark Gable character to take advantage of her at all in this film, which is a really kind of almost a chivalrous thing to do. Basically, throughout this film, we are going to spoil it for you. So, this film did come out a very long time ago. So, but still see this movie if you haven't yet. And if you've seen this movie, you're not spoiled at all. But basically, throughout this road trip that they take, basically from Florida, I believe, all the way up to New York, on a bus, is that she doesn't really know how to function in the regular world. She doesn't know how to manage her money. She doesn't know how to talk with people. She doesn't know how kind of things really work when you're in the regular world. I mean, at one point she gets all of her stuff stolen from her because she's so absent-minded, because she lives in kind of this rich person's bubble where nothing really bad happens to them. The worst thing that has happened to her is that her father doesn't want her to be married to this other super rich dude. I mean, like, that's her biggest problem.
Yeah, that's the big thing too, is like, you get this real kind of like switch, because at the beginning of the movie, you can tell she's kind of a brat, which she gets called that throughout the movie by Clark Gable's character. It's his nickname for her, is brat, and she wants to marry this dude. The father's kind of, you can't tell who is on the bad side, and then he slaps her, which is kind of a taboo thing nowadays. You see a man hit a woman at all, or even talk about hitting a woman, which that happens too. Clark Gable's like, "I'll break your neck" in this one scene, and you're like, well, nowadays, it's like, oh my god,
Yeah, it's like, it's interesting how it is very much set in that time. It's anchored in that time because of those sexual tropes. The physical and verbal abuse of women is rampant in old classic Hollywood films. It's there, and that was the culture of the time. I would like to think we've grown a lot as a society since, but what is interesting, as much as it anchors that film in that time, women are still physically and verbally abused. I mean, that still happens in modern films. It still happens in modern reality. And so it's very interesting how it plays in the old way, but yet it still feels very relevant today, which is very interesting about this film. And like I was saying, it's almost as if the Claudette Colbert character has to go on a character journey, as well as the Clark Gable character. They both have to have these character arcs where they're kind of confronted about their various emotional vulnerabilities. You know what I mean? She kind of says she's never actually gone on a date with a man. She's never, been physical with a man before in any way. And she is really not in this film. And what's his name? And Clark Gable's character doesn't take advantage of her in any way like that, which I thought was very interesting. He even goes so far as to put up this fictitious wall between them in a motel.
The
I mean,
walls of
they're
Jericho.
bed, but it's called the Walls of Jericho, and it's a very famous, yeah, scene in the movie where it's very interesting that he almost absentmindedly does it. Like he does it on purpose just to put her at ease without even her having to say anything about it, which is very interestingly chivalrous for his character, who we're introduced to him as a roguish man. Like he's drunk, yelling on a telephone. There's all these other guys around him, and he's like saying he's just trying to he's just talking off his editor for his newspaper, trying to sound all macho. But underneath, he is extremely different.
Which is really funny because it's like at the time Clark Gable was known for his more macho roles. He, if you don't know, he was also in a very famous film called Gone with the Wind.
Yeah,
which came out a couple years later. But yeah, he's being very macho, in most of his movies before this, and then now he's playing kind of almost against type. And that one scene you're talking about leads to one of my favorite moments in the movie, where he goes on the bus and the only seats left has newspapers in it, throws the newspapers out, and the bus driver's like, I'm going to sock you on the nose. And he's like, oh, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, we could have been done with this conversation long ago if this is all you were going to say.
Yeah, he's like, he's only like, and then there's only like one seat left in the back of the bus, and Claudette Colbert is sitting in it, but it's like, it can be made to fit two people uncomfortably. And he's like, yeah, it's going to be made to fit two people. And he's like,
so does this seat accommodate two people? It does and it doesn't. And then he's like, this is one of them. It does.
Yeah, it does now. I mean,
but yeah, I think that great, like, because a lot of times with older films, before I started getting into classic films, a lot of my issues were that fast talky, like just too much. Like I feel like this movie has such good writing, and the actors play it in such a way where it doesn't seem like that newspaper talk. Hey,
it's not
it's
full,
natural. It feels very real.
Yeah, it's not full screwball. The screwball comedy is a lot faster. It's like bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
A lot of that was done with Howard Hawks, specifically for a film His Girl Friday, Bring Me Up Baby. Cary Grant was amazing at doing the quick and fast dialogue. This film is not quite there. It's more of a traditional romance like today you would see. That's why I think the film really has a lot of great staying power. Also, I mean, Frank Capra is an exquisite filmmaker. I call him the king of 1930s American cinema because he had so many great films. He had It Happened One Night. He had Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. He had Mr. Deeds Comes to Town. He had
It's a Wonderful Life.
He had It's a Wonderful Life. And he's just one of, in my opinion, the all-time greats. And what makes him so great is his ability to work with characters. Like he knows how to really get to the humanistic level of characters. And we see that in so much of his work, and we see it here, especially as the film goes along. There is so much great character moments between the Clark Gable character and the Claudette Colbert character, especially when they're alone together at night outside. We get a lot of moments of vulnerability between the two, and they're exquisitely well made. They're well shot. A lot of the movie was shot either on very quickly made sets, things like the bus or things like the motel room, or they were shot outside. I mean, it's a very small film that does so much utilizing very little. It's just a wonderful, wonderful character film.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, as I was kind of researching on this movie, one thing I hear that was kind of a different thing that Capra did with this film that he doesn't usually do with his directing style is he held shots a little longer in this movie. There's times where he just stays on a character just to get that expression of something that the other person had just said, or and that really is what deepens the connection between the characters, is their reactions to something else that's happening in the scene, and getting that through just and just playing in to some of the other video movies on this like Chaplin. that's on in this book too. You know, physical acting. You know, like that plays a big part in this movie. A lot of just expressions and a lot of just, you know, without saying anything, they say a lot. So
Yeah, and another film that actually won Best Picture very quickly afterwards is You Can't Take It With You, starring Gene Arthur and Jimmy Stewart. And what is interesting is you see all of these films with the character moments. And like you were saying, Stephen, those shots were just really great because they're single shots on the character and they just hold the expression on their faces. A lot of it looks like just shot by moonlight, as if they were shot outside over an open sky, which is kind of really hard to pull off on a set and not make it look artificial. And he was able to do that very, very well.
yeah, I think filmmakers like Frank Capra kind of set that standard for, you know, because it's something I'd heard about before when it came to directing. You should never cut too fast. You should let the camera keep going for a little bit longer before it's time to cut it, because you never know if you might get some kind of magic expression on the face or something great.
I think Vim Vendors may have said that.
Yeah,
you never know what you're going to get. The longer you hold the shot, and I'm one of those people who I really appreciate long takes because they're extremely difficult to do, and also I think they let the films breathe some more. They let the films flow better than cut, because there's just so much going on that you're like, I don't care to keep up anymore because I can't keep up. But the old style of filmmaking really led to the films flowing much better. Specifically, when a lot of the sequences are done in two shots, a lot of profile shots between Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert. You know, they're just singular in the frame together, and they're just talking, and it's just impeccably easy to do. But a lot of filmmakers tend to fail at doing that, and it's kind of like the essentials of filmmaking are what is so important, and people like Frank Capra really excelled at that, which made them such a huge success at the time and made them, you know, revered as one of the greatest of all time. I mean, he's the man not only I think cinephiles love, but you know, movie watchers in general like, and critics too. I mean, this is one of the few directors of all times who won 3 Oscars, which is kind of like a big number for directors. You don't see very many of them win all time. I mean, even modern directors like Martin Scorsese only has 1 Oscar. I think Steven Spielberg, I believe, has 2. If I'm not
he won for Saving Private Ryan and Schindler's List.
Yeah, he has 2, and he's considered one of the great modern directors. Not a lot of directors get more than 1 or 2 in their career, and he had 3 all within a short amount of time. Just an exquisite director.
Yeah, and going to a couple of my other favorite scenes, and I'm sure it's some of your favorites too. The hitchhiking scene is kind of a famous scene from this movie.
Yeah. He teaches her how to hitchhike.
Yeah. So he's over here trying to teach her, and he's like telling her the different types of thumb movements. Like you got the stiff one for like you're independent, and then you got the jiggly one. It's like you know, and then you got the long one where you're kind of sad. But then he proves him wrong and says that doesn't work. And this kind of I think is something that is a very kind of something that other movies have taken this scene and done it again, which is she goes out to the road, puts her leg out, shows her leg, and then the car stops right away. Yeah,
she shows her leg with the stocking or whatever. Yeah, and I saw that parody, man, when I was a little kid. I would see that parody. They would do it in movies, they would do it in cartoons, they would do it all the time, and I'm like, and I never knew where it was from until I watched It Happen One Night. And what is interesting about that scene is, they get picked up by this guy who's just like just singing his lights out. He's like, oh yeah, and then he ends up just driving off without him, and Clark Gable chases him, and he comes back with the car, and she's like, oh, what happened to him? I gave him a black eye and tied him to a tree. I mean, I'm like, oh, okay.
That's dark.
Like, did you like leave him for dead out there? Because I mean, it's 1934. There's no cell phones.
Yeah, and another scene that really, and this actually might be my favorite scene, because I think this scene really shows the chemistry of the 2 characters, and that they're, as an audience member, seeing them falling in love in front of your eyes, even though they don't really know it yet. And that's the scene where detectives are looking for her, and they have to play it off like she's somebody else.
That scene
So
is brilliant. That's like the
yeah,
best
it's brilliant.
improv comedy scene ever.
As they're pretending, kind of being different people, really, they have to actually pretend to be somebody else together, and they kind of have this bonding moment where they're pretending to, and he's acting like he's arguing with her as his wife, and he's really going into it. She's playing into it, and when they're gone, they both laugh together, and you see him come up to her and button up her shirt, and there's an obvious closeness, even though they haven't known each other very long, and it's just a really just fantastic scene.
Yeah, it's actors acting in a movie, acting again in a different role. It's an insane paradox, and it's just like the improv stuff that they're able to come up with right away is very screwball comedy-esque, and it's just fantastic how they're able to bamboozle these detectives that are hot on their tail, because this whole time she's kind of on the run from her father, who's trying to look for her all up and down the coast, because at the beginning of the film, she escapes by jumping off a boat, which is kind of crazy, because there's a sequence later on where I believe it's when they're in the hay, and I don't know if you've ever been around hay, but hay is not very comfortable. It gets everywhere, and it sticks in places you don't want it to stick. But they're under the starlight, and they're basically having this heart-to-heart talk, and it's another one of those great character moments. And he's describing, what his life mate would be, what his ideal woman would be, and it's
I think that was in the scene where they it was like the last time they were at a
was it the last scene? Yeah, I get my scenes mixed up together, but I just want to talk about how uncomfortable Hay is.
Yeah, he is very uncomfortable. Yes.
Yeah, he is very uncomfortable. Yeah, that is the last scene that you referenced earlier, where she throws herself at him, and he kind of rejects her. She misinterprets it as him rejecting her, but in a way, it's him kind of being unsure of himself and not really knowing what to do. For all his bravado, he really doesn't know what to do in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, just as much as she is experienced with men, he's inexperienced with showing himself, showing his real self. So she's seeing some of the real him, and he's afraid to really say he loves her, even though he does. And that leads me to another great scene, which is when he comes in to meet the father at the end.
Yes.
And he's like, do you love my daughter? And he's like, you have to be a crazy person to love you. He's like, just tell me, do you love her? Yes, I love her.
Yeah, I love her. Yeah. And it's like, he's so emotionally stirred up by her. And you know what I mean? And like you were saying, they both have these almost not facades, if you will, but like these character barriers that they have to break down by being together and to come and to really show their true selves. And it's really kind of incredible. And as we see by the end of this film, they do end up together. And it's a great scene where she runs away from her wedding from that other rich guy who looked insanely way too old to be her husband, but that's another thing. And it's like, and it's kind of one of those tropes you've seen in films now, the runaway bride. I mean, they did a movie with Julia Roberts. It was called The Runaway Bride, where she ran away from weddings. And it's interesting how, like, in 1934, they did that trope, and it translates to today. And one of my,
this movie's kind of a mixture of Runaway Bride and Overboard.
Yeah. One of my other favorite scenes, for no apparent reason, and it doesn't have much to do with the plot, is when they're driving the bus and people are just singing. The Man in the Flying Trapeze. I don't know why I love that scene so much, but it just shows the genuine nature of camaraderie amongst people when they're put in one place together. There's no animosity. There's no, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. I mean, they're just singing just to pass the time. And one person's singing one verse. The other guy goes, oh, yeah, I know the second verse. I'll sing it. He starts singing it. And it's another one of those kind of social commentary moments where these are just regular people doing kind of what regular people travel on, is a bus. And then there's the one scene, and it's followed up right away with that kid and his mother, who are, and the mother like passes out because they don't have any money for food. They basically just have enough money to travel. So you have to choose, travel or don't eat. Travel or eating, travel or eating, and they chose the travel versus the eating, and that's when they give up. Clark Gable gives up the final like money that he has for this kid, or I think Claudette Colbert gives it up, and he just goes.
Yeah, well, he's thinking about it. He's thinking about it. And she takes it out of his hand.
Yeah, yeah.
From then on, from then on, he has to trade in stuff to get money.
Yeah, he tries to sell basically anything he can, just to get by. Which I assume a lot of people had to do at the time to get by, was trade stuff, barter stuff, borrow whatever, and it's interesting because while that is the right thing to do in that moment, he tells her after, that was the last of our money. We don't have anything else now, and so now they're kind of.
It's part of that character, her character, who is somebody that's used to having everything she needs and everything she wants, and that's part of what you said, like you said earlier. Part of the character stuff she had to break down, to get to the point that she needed, to fall in love with him, and see, a real man, essentially, and somebody that she could actually love instead of some rich dude that she can just waste her life with, maybe.
Yeah. It's interesting that the concept of eating raw carrots from nature is just like absurd to her, like so abhorrent to her. And he's just sitting there eating carrots. It's like, it's either this or starve. It's like sometimes if you're hungry, you're going to eat whatever is available. There's no other choice. You're going to eat these carrots or die. And she ends up, starting to eat carrots by the end of this movie. She has to adapt. He has to adapt. I mean, it's really just an insanely well done character film. I absolutely love it so much, and just so much to say about it. Like we've been going on and on about it. It's why it's an essential film. It's why it's in this book. It's why it's part of the Criterion collection. I
was gonna say, if there's any place you want to get a good version of this movie, is Criterion.
That's really great how I worked that in.
We were in the same time. I was about to hit there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also part of Columbia's backlot of great pictures, that they were doing in the 1930s. Harry Cohn and Columbia and Frank Capra, one of the greatest of all time. And I'm glad we're able to actually watch it today and appreciate it for how great a film that it is.
Yes, definitely. Most definitely. Well, any final thoughts on this? Well, I guess you kind of did.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's a definite must-see movie, guys. You heard all our thoughts on it. That's going to be it for this video on It Happened One Night, directed by Frank Capra. And keep watching out for more of these videos. You're going to see one every week for a while. Please pick up the book if you want to kind of cheat and see where we're going with see all these different movies we're going to talk about. You got Dan Skip Allen, who's going to be jumping on some of these. You got Mark Tordai. You got a few others that are going to be joining in on these videos. And that'll be on the Best Damn Movie Show page where you can find these. And I'm Stephen Billings. You can find my channel, Film Club Central, where we do the Film Club Movie Show. Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, Kevzilla Productions, where I do movie reviews and stuff like that. And yeah, stick around because we're going to be doing a lot of these. There are 52 movies we have to talk about. So a lot more videos like this will be coming.
Well, thanks, guys. And that's going to be it. Have a good night.